Welcome, everyone, to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. In Hebrew, our name is Abitronistim. We have a lot to cover today, so we're going to jump straight into it. It's a great privilege to be joined by Brigadier General Amir Avivi, the founder and chairman of IDSF, who is working every day defending the people of Israel, the Jewish people, the state of Israel. General Avivi, it's great to have you. What can you share with us in terms of updates in this war right now?
Well, what I can say is that I think this week seems to be quite dramatic. We are dealing with the big question whether there will be a hostages deal. We know that there is extensive talks, and we have to understand something that the Chief of Staff, the Minister of Defense, the Prime Minister are saying. The one reason why Hamas is considering a deal is the military pressure. The attack in Gaza is continuing to be fierce. We are killing every day between 50 to 100 terrorists, mainly focusing at the moment still on the last battalion of Khan Yunis and in Zaytun, and a bit in the central camps. Zaytun is in the north. The IDF presented to the Prime Minister the plans to conquer Rafah. The Prime Minister had an interesting interview, where he said that he thinks that we can defeat Hamas not in months, in weeks. And when he says weeks, this of course independent on the IDF going into Rafah and destroying Hamas and bringing down Hamas as a governmental and military entity. This is something we can do. Needs to be done. The Prime Minister is pushing hard on the IDF to do all the preparations, including presenting how to move the Palestinians from Rafah. Now we have to remember that we moved 1 million people, 40 kilometers from the north of Gaza to the south. Now we need to move them maybe 4 kilometers, not 40. So I don't understand why people tend to look at it like if it's something complicated. It's less complicated than before. They need to move to maybe to Khan Yunis or to the sea area, which is very close to Rafah. So it's supposed to be less complicated than it was before. And then the IDF can operate. There is huge amounts of weapons capabilities inside Rafah. This is where all the things that are coming through the tunnels from Egypt into Rafah are concentrated. And also, while Hamas was withdrawing from the north to the center, and then to the center to Khan Yunis, and then from Khan Yunis to Rafah, everything is being concentrated there, and this is the last decisive, basically, part of the war. And I'm hopeful that as soon as possible, the IDF will go in. This is, of course, all happening as we are approaching the Ramadan. I think that the Ramadan is less of a consideration in Gaza, more in Jerusalem. And the government is talking with the army, the police, the Shin Bet about how prayers in Temple Mount will be. Are we going to restrict the amount or the age of the people that are going to Temple Mount? And I think it would be wise to do so, to restrict the amount and the age and not bring people from the West Bank, from Judah and Samaria, only Israeli Arabs, and also Israeli Arabs, not young ones. We don't want to see riots on the Temple Mount. Is something that we need to prevent. In the north, there have been today massive shooting on the Golan Heights after the IDF, maybe for the first time, attacked north of Beirut, warehouses of Hamas, mostly of strategic weapons. So the IDF is expanding the attacks in Lebanon, also continuing to target leaders of Hezbollah. One of the interesting things that the Minister of Defense said is that the guys that were killed, there are no volunteers to replace them. Not much motivation of commanders in Hezbollah to be targeted. The IDF has pushed Hezbollah north a few kilometers and is all the time degrading their capabilities, but still we are in this very complex situation where our citizens are not in the north. One of the things we in IDSF are building, I just finished a meeting now dealing with building leadership programs, kind of pre-army programs all over the towns in the north, in the south, to strengthen the towns, to bring many youngsters to help build the towns again and volunteer and guard. And we are going to do it through a huge program of pre-army programs along the borders to really help build back all the towns, and it's going to be a very, very big and meaningful challenge. Moshe, I know you have a lot of questions, so please.
Thank you, General, for that update. And thank you, of course, to all of our viewers and supporters for tuning into the briefing and for sending me your questions, whether you're sending them in the chat right now or you emailed them or messaged me earlier. Again, they're all appreciated. We're going to try to cover as much as we can. General, you mentioned that we could potentially be weeks away from the defeat of Hamas once the operations kick up in the Rafah area. What does that look like? What is the definitive moment where the prime minister or the IDF announces that Hamas has been destroyed? Is there something that needs to happen? It'll be clear to all. When does that happen?
Well, you know, one of the interesting things is that we're getting control of more and more areas in Gaza, most of the areas, and yet people look at it and say, but we're not seeing, you know, the big result we want to see, reaching the leadership of Hamas, reaching the hostages. And the reason is that they are retreating and retreating. Now they retreated to Rafah, and that's it. This is the last stronghold. When we'll go into Rafah, it won't look anything like anything we saw before, because it's all in Rafah. The leadership is in Rafah, the hostages are in Rafah, and the expectation is that we reach the leadership of Hamas and kill them. We reach the hostages and release them. We destroy the 4 battalions of Hamas in Rafah, along with 2 other battalions in the central camps, which we didn't finish the job yet. And I think everything will be dramatic when we go into Rafah. Everything will look different because that's it. That's the last stronghold. So it's going to be very, very dramatic. And I guess that they are going to fight, you know, with the back against the wall, literally, because there is a wall there. This we'll see afterwards what impact this is going to do also in the north.
Realistically, can Israel declare victory in Hamas before there's a resolution, a return of the hostages?
I think that this is going to happen at the same time. I mean, the destruction of the leadership of Hamas will bring also the hostages in one way or another. So I think we can reach both goals in the same time period, maybe weeks away. I think that once the society in Gaza will understand that Hamas is not exists anymore in Gaza, and we are the ones controlling the Gaza Strip, there will be a huge change. It will happen like by surprise. We will see suddenly things moving faster. So I'm very much looking forward to the ground operation.
Now, you mentioned that there's quite literally a wall behind them, the border with Egypt. Is there a concern that there is a significant tunnel infrastructure that Hamas and or the hostages will just move into Egypt and take the battle there?
So there is a concern that the leadership of Hamas with hostages will try to escape to Egypt. I know that the government is trying to really trying to coordinate with the Egyptians to prevent that. We cannot be 100% sure. We don't know what will happen because we're not there yet. Definitely there are many tunnels. For the Egyptians, that might be very embarrassing to have the leadership of Hamas with hostages on Egyptian soil. So I want to believe that they will try to prevent this scenario, but we don't know. We don't know exactly what will happen.
And do you think that Israel and the US are on the same page in terms of what needs to happen in Rafah right now?
So I think that both Israel and the US want Hamas destroyed. So on this, we are on the same page. The US is not telling Israel not to go into Rafah. They do want assurances that we are moving the citizens to a safety place and trying to minimize the casualties. But the problem is that we want the same thing, but not for the same reasons. And we know that the administration is trying to push a two-state solution. Within IDSF published this week a letter to Biden signed by all our generals saying clearly that the two-state solution he proposes is an existential threat to Israel. And we say it in the name of almost 30,000 Israeli officers and commanders and operators in our movement. The letter was published on Fox News, and Fox News also tweeted in their account, 24 million people, the letter and the article they wrote. I hope we see more prominent figures in the US retweeting this, because it's not every day that so many generals and commanders say to the president of Israel, you are endangering us existentially. And also we're rewarding terror by sending a message to the Palestinians that the more violent they are, the more terrible is the massacre, the bigger are the chances for them to get an Israeli withdrawal with US pushing this. So definitely we look at it as something that is terrible and shouldn't happen. And we hope to see a change in the policy.
Now, I've heard you speak about the difference of opinion between Prime Minister Netanyahu on this war and the IDF leadership. Are you able to elaborate a little bit on what the disagreements are and where you stand on that issue?
So I think that really it's mostly about the day after. The Prime Minister sees reality as we do. He understands that we must control militarily the Egyptian border, that we need complete freedom of operation everywhere in Gaza, that this is going to be for years or generations, and it's not something short. And he also understands that for a certain period of time, the IDF will need to really control completely everything in the Gaza Strip, and the army doesn't like that. The army just wants to finish the job and go out. But if we go out, everything will come back, and there will be Hamas again. So, in this sense, I think that the Prime Minister is very emboldened by having a huge organization like us, empowering him and saying to him, this is the right thing to do professionally. This helps him stand in front of the leadership of the army, something that hasn't happened in the last 20 years, and insisting on his policies. And when Prime Minister Netanyahu published this week all his guidelines, principles about the day after, everything that is written in this document is things that we talked with him about in the many meetings we had in the last few months. So I think that in this sense, we are having a huge, huge impact on decision-making in Israel.
So again, speaking about the leadership of the IDF, which is not thinking the same way as the leadership of IDSF, do you see a scenario in the coming 5, 10, 15 years where the IDF leadership changes its way of thinking, and maybe the lower ranking officers coming up the ranks right now in the IDF are more of the IDSF type mindset?
Yes, and I think that IDSF will have an impact on that, and is already having an impact. I expect a real change in leadership in the IDF in the coming years. People who are more connected to reality, more understanding really what is needed to secure Israel, more Zionistic, but classic Zionism. I mean, I'll give you an example. In 71, Sharon was the commander of the Southern Command, and he presented a plan in Gaza called the Five Fingers. The Five Fingers was a plan to settle Jews in 5 different corridors in the Gaza Strip. The first one was in the Sinai Peninsula, what we know today as Yamit, and all the towns south of Philadelphia, settling the area of Sufa corridor, which is in front of the southern part of Gush Katif, settling the area of the corridor north of that, the corridor of Netzarim, and then the corridor and the northern area of Gaza, and the middle, the corridor of Kisufim. This is the way generals thought in the 70s, 80s. Today, to the existing generals in the army, this is almost inconceivable. I mean, thinking about settling as part of a national security need, something that every single officer in the IDSF understands. Today, the leadership of the IDF is completely disconnected from these ideas. So yes, we need a change in understanding the connection between settling and security, the connection between national security and national values, Judaism and Zionism. What is defensible borders? What is the importance of the ground forces and the need of a strong, independent, well-equipped army that doesn't need US assistance after 2 weeks? All these things need to change. And these things, all of them, we in IDSF understood before and understand now. So definitely we need new leadership.
You know, you and many other leaders of IDSF are lecturing almost every single day to the pre-army programs across the country, so that the new 18-year-olds entering into the army have this mindset. But that's obviously many years in the advance in terms of changing the upper echelons of the leadership. Do you think October 7th?
For sure, everything we do, we always say for generations to come.
Right.
We think generationally.
100%. 100%. But the question is, do we have to wait another generation, or can we see in the aftermath of October 7th the national awareness that there needs to be a change?
No, of course we don't have to wait a generation, because the 7th of October changed everything in Israel. It accelerates everything, but it's not automatic. It's something that we need to work to really make sure that this acceleration goes the right way and doesn't derail. So we have a lot to do. And I'm very optimistic. I think that things are going the right way, but still also we're facing a long war. We have a lot of challenges.
I want to try to get to a couple issues that are in the news right now. A number of hours ago, there was an announcement that the Palestinian Authority Prime Minister and his government offered their resignations to the President Abbas. Any thoughts on what's happening in the PA right now?
Yes, they are, trying to masquerade and try to put a show through the administration saying we are revitalized, we are new, we changed, and so on. And of course, it's all really kind of a joke. And they are not changing, they are not going to change. So we're not going to play along with these games they're doing.
Also in the news, there was a piece about the Israel Air Force establishing an Iran department. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more on what that means? They weren't thinking about Iran until the article came out today. What's happening there?
Well, I think that, one of the things that we have to make sure is when a war finishes, when it will finish, is that we don't build a force according to the previous war, but looking forward. And it's clear that looking forward, the next challenge is Iran. And so we need to, after we finish with Hamas and possibly also with Hezbollah, it's obvious that the biggest challenge we'll have afterwards, and I'm not talking about internal challenges like Israeli Arabs or Palestinian Arabs, it will be Iran. So obviously we need to accelerate preparations for a possible attack on the Iranian nuclear installations or other targets in Iran. And this is part of the processes that we see.
A lot of our viewers are asking about the draft of the ultra-Orthodox and what is happening with that right now in Israel. To what extent is the IDF getting more active in that issue? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that really living in these biblical times, I have big expectation from the rabbis and leadership of the ultra-Orthodox communities to show leadership and understand that we are in times of huge wars and we need everybody. We need people to join the army, the police, the border patrol, National Guard, whatever is needed. And what was cannot continue. Cannot have a small portion of the society serving for 6 months, 7 months, not working, dying on the battlefield, and then a certain part that is not serving. There is no example in our Bible of this kind of dynamics. The Jewish people have always combined the studies of the Bible with service, with serving the country in wars. Maybe the best examples is David, who wrote Tehillim, but then also was a great warrior. So we need a change, but having said that, I really resent people politicizing this, trying to create divisive politics, trying to get the Zionist religious against the ultra-religious, trying to get the people who are serving to be against Haredim. No, we are all one nation. We need to be united. We need to really discuss this, find solutions, but not from a stance of hate and division. We cannot be divided. And this is something that we in IDSF are pushing strongly on the public sphere. We're not going to let organizations push divisive politics and take advantage of a problem that is a real problem that needs to be solved, but needs to be solved in a way that is not divisive.
There's of course a perception in that ultra-Orthodox community that service in the IDF does not run in accordance with their life decisions and their levels of Judaism, so to speak. So someone from the other side, meaning you, a general in the IDF, would you say the IDF is generally accommodating to them, meaning their claim, is that a legitimate claim, or it's really just an ideological issue and they put a front of these technical issues, but that's not really what it's about?
Well, I think that the IDF has gained a lot of experience in service of ultra-Orthodox. We have very successful programs in the Air Force, in the intelligence, in some of the infantry brigades, and we have the Haredi battalion. And this battalion needs to become a brigade, a Haredi brigade. So instead of having one battalion, and even in this battalion, we're lacking warriors. Instead of having one battalion, we can have 2 or 3 or 4 in the same brigade, in a brigade of ultra-Orthodox, where, everything that they need and feel comfortable with will be. So I don't think that there is no solutions for this, and I really think we have a historical opportunity to really change the society. And one of the things, when I envision the Israeli society looking in the long term, I see a society of Maccabim. Everybody is part of the defending our country. Now, this might sound a bit like Sparta, but I always say that you can be Sparta and also Athens, meaning we can be very strong fighters, but also enjoy life, food, travel, music, culture, and be the happy nation that we are, and with beauty and aesthetics and everything. And above these 2 characteristics, we really, all of us, we need to be more Jewish and more Zionistic. And we really connect back to our values. So we need to find the right path in the triangle between Sparta, Athens, and Jerusalem, and really build a nation that is actually really a light to the nations. And I think that today the problem is that people always think that it's either one of them, or all out with the Judaism and studying Bible all day, all out with the restaurants and the food and having fun in Tel Aviv, or all out in being warriors. And no, it's a combination. We need to really combine all of these characteristics.
Amen. It's a good plan. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers for tuning in today. Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for giving us your time and sharing all of this with us. Tomorrow, we are going to be joined by Brigadier General Yossi Cooperwasser, who's going to really give us an in-depth understanding of the intelligence of the IDF. He was the former head of research of the intelligence division. So please stay tuned, everyone, tomorrow for that, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.